And welcome back to the SPL Day 2. Set number 2 is the one we're going to be tackling up next. We already had our first match of the day finish up between the Jade Dragons and the Valhalla Valkyries. That one went over to the Jade Dragons. Now we'll be talking about our second one. That's going to have the Tartarus Titans up against the Camelot Kings. But I can't talk about them just by myself. I mean, I probably could, but it's all easier when you got someone to help you out here. That's why I got Mifflin sitting by to assist me here on the desk.
I never moved. I've been here the whole time.
He has not. He has been planted in that chair for the last, 15 minutes.
And it's unfortunate because it's not a Maxinomic, and I wish it was.
It was. I mean, I don't know how high those ones can actually go. I don't think we'd
Not
be able
this
to,
high.
We wouldn't be able to get to at least desk height there.
No.
But talking about it, we got our next set here. Kings versus Titans. We have the former runner-ups of the World Championships going up against the only team that was able to take a game against the World Champions during the Season 8 there with the Camelot Kings now here up against the Tartarus Titans. And this is a battle that we're going to be talking a lot, I think, about the mid-roll specifically. It was something that we talked about during our waiting room, and we'll get to that in just a moment here. Let's take a look, though, at the schedule and see what we still have for the remainder of this week coming up, maybe what you may have missed if you're just now tuning in. We had the Jade Dragons get their win up. Now it'll be the Kings and the Titans. And then tomorrow we've got our triple header Sunday that starts at 11 a.m. Remember, this is what we're continuing to do here throughout Phase 1 is start at 11 a.m. on those Sunday matchups out. Scarabs, Titans, Bolts, Dragons, and Warriors and Kings to end that week out here. But going back to this set specifically, Camelot Kings now sitting at the top of the standings as of now, 3-1 for themselves. I believe their only loss up against the Atlantis Leviathans at the very beginning of the phase. But ever since then, Mifflin, these Kings have really been on the rise.
Yeah, the Camelot Kings continue to impress. Not only have they become very quickly one of the best macro farming teams in the league, they've diversified how they start to draft. It's something they brought up in the initial interviews was, hey, how are we going to improve this year? Let's just get deeper God pools. Let's just figure out how to play more stuff and keep people guessing. And I'd argue they've done a great job of it.
Yeah, they've been able to do that so here. And going up against the Kings is going to be Paul here in this mid lane. And it was interesting that Gore brought up during the waiting room. We were talking specifically about the Kings mid laner, BMT. We were talking about Paul. We were talking about Shinto. And the fact that last year, or at least in Phase 3, Paul only died, I think Gore said 18 times the entire way through. And Paul has almost matched that just in the first couple of weeks of play so far here. So Paul hasn't had the most successful streak so far of staying alive in the mid that we're more accustomed to, but I think a lot of it comes down to the more volatile style of gods he's been playing, specifically this AMC.
Yeah, he's been experimenting a little bit more so with his God pool, and you're right to bring up AMC as just not a super safe pick, especially looking at what he was playing against. Even in this set, the Valhalla Valkyries had a phenomenal dive composition, but Paul has been largely hailed as one of the best mid laners in the league, if not the best mid laner in the league, for going on 2 to 3 years now. Also in the conversation with Shinto, I think when you talk about the best mids, those two jump to the forefront of the conversation, and for good reason. Paul has legitimately single-handedly won world stage matches for his squad. Things like the Morrigan triple kills to save his team from having to deal with a siege, or Scylla Quadras essentially completely on his own with just chaining I'm a Monster perfectly. This is a player that is going to, on a good day, invalidate the rest of his team and that he won't need them. That's how strong he is. But on the other side, and in his opposition, Big Man Tings, I think, dark horse in that conversation, needs to be brought up more often. BMT has been at the top of those standings. His KDA has been up there with Paul, with Shinto. In the last season, sure, the Camelot Kings don't have as great a performance throughout the regular phase, but that's not BMT's fault. He has consistently been great.
I mean, ever since BMT finally got over here, got onto land to play with the rest of the team, it's been nothing but improvement from his. He's been able to expand this God pool a little bit more, which is something that all the Kings have been talking about doing so here. And it's another player, when it comes down to the picks and bans, we always talk about, okay, well, who do we focus out here? Do we target the jungler? Do we target the solo laner out here? It feels like for both these teams, mid is almost impossible to really target ban out here. I mean, Paul, you can throw 6-7 bans at that guy, essentially, between your 5 and then grab a couple of picks. He's still going to find something to play. Similar can be said here for BMT. You can't put too many bans up against this player because he'll find something to play and he'll just outperform you on it.
Yeah, hunters, mages, doesn't matter. Big Man Tings has got that in his back pocket. So far has been the highest performing player as far as fantasy is concerned this year. And I've got him on my squad.
I knew that was coming.
He has been hard carrying me, all right? Look at the KDA, 6.5, 20,000 damage. He was one of the highest farmed players in Season 8 and has consistently found himself near the top of the rankings. He's a threat. He doesn't get as much bans tossed towards him, maybe because of what you brought up. He's got a very diverse God pool of eclectic picks. But maybe I think it's more so that the Camelot Kings are slightly slept on even despite still finding themselves at the top of the standings.
Yeah, I mean, this is a wild squad for really both these teams out here. I mean, you never know what's going to come from these two teams. And luckily, we got to talk to them just a little bit here. We got a very special video interviewing a couple of these players.
I feel like our team's performed pretty average, honestly. Even though we've won a lot of games, a lot of sets, I think every single game we've played has gone, all 3 games. So, it's been a lot of 2-1s. We did lose to Leviathans 1-2. I don't know if that's a product of every team being more competitive or us just not performing at our best, but I think first place for now, I'll take it.
I think we are doing okay. We're not obviously the top team, I don't think. We are up there, but we're definitely struggling. We need to definitely improve over the next couple weeks, and I think that's what we're gonna do.
Moving forward, I think us as a team, we have a lot of problems early game, especially in scrims. We try and work on it a lot to, try not to die within the first 5 minutes and end the game and have Laspera walking around the jungle 10-0. But yeah, I think our early game's probably our biggest struggle. I think maybe our warding a little bit mid-game is a bit bad, but we're gonna keep working to improve on it.
The biggest focus on improvement will be getting more synergy with Sot. He's new to us, and he's a different player than Benji. He likes to play more aggressive, but we just have to definitely intertwine him or integrate him into our team and just make sure that we work well with him.
Going into the Titans, I feel like they honestly kind of, not to disrespect Zox, I think he had a great last year and he played phenomenally at Worlds, but I don't think anyone's kind of comparable to Benji. I think Benji's always been he's probably the go-to solo. He's probably been the best solo to ever touch the game. So yeah, I think they're definitely a weaker team. I think that's kind of showed in some of their gameplay.
I think the Kings have been doing really well. I think they're a top team as well. I just think we have to show up and play our game against them and make sure that we are on our P's and Q's and we'll do well.
The biggest threat on the Titans, apart from being on time, I'd say probably Paul. Probably Paul and Cyclone. I just think they have a really good backline. They don't really make any mistakes. They don't make any mistakes in lane either. I think they're really hard to punish. They use the actors really well. So probably the backline is probably the biggest threat of Titans.
The biggest threat on the Kings is Variety, I'd say. He's been pretty aggressive with the Bolognas and stuff, and he's been doing really well for them. I think he's kind of their leader late game, and he kind of leads the way. So
the result of the set, I think we've gone 3 games every game, so probably 2-1 to us, I'd say.
Either 2-0 or 2-1 favoring us, I'd say.
2-1s is kind of the topic here, and that so far has been what the Kings have done in every single one of their sets. It has gone the full distance through, not a single 2-0 out of this team yet. Titans have found a couple of 2-0s here, but I think it's interesting, kind of hearing from Variety, think that maybe a slightly weaker team here in Season 9 with the removal of Benji and now with SOT taking the reins over into the solo lane. It seems that Variety's not as concerned about that lane in particular.
Well, J-Mac, you know how I feel about that.
Yes, I think we all do.
I've said it so many times, I've got to sound like a broken record, but I really do think SOT is one of the most mechanical players to have ever touched the game. Whether or not Variety's statement on the team being overall weaker, the Tartarus Titans that is true or not, I couldn't say personally. It might be the case just because the Tartarus Titans are having to deal with some slight growing pains. But when I think of what Benji brings to a team and when I think of what SOT brings to the team, it's incredibly similar. They are both consistent team fight monsters who are never really ever going to lose you a game due to their laning phase because they can hold their own against legitimately everybody. They're both generally pretty quiet guys. I've never had the opportunity to play with these teams or listen into their comms and scrims or whatnot, so I don't know what Benji brought to communications or what SOT does. But when I get the opportunity to walk next to the water cooler and they're sipping Gatorade or whatever it is they're doing, and I talk to them, they're both generally pretty quiet guys. They talk like this. They like to mumble under their voice, generally pretty monotone. And I think maybe in having that, that would be alleviating some of those growing pains, having somebody who is essentially plug and play in there and has a similar vibe. And also the Titans are benefiting from having Benji still on as that coach.
Yeah, and he was able to step in last week during the first game of their set, and also going on for what Variety talked about. It's something that's been echoed amongst us, the casters, amongst a lot of people in the community as well, is that the Titans do just have a solid backline. It's one of the harder ones in the league to dive. I mean, that's why we constantly heralded Paul as one of the better mids, because he's just not dying. You throw 3-4 people at him in mid, he's going to find a way to sneak out of these team fights here. And Cyclone's been on that similar vein, but maybe so much more that Cyclone kind of gets ignored in a way because it's the duo lane, it's Hunters, they're both going to get online, do Hunter things. But as of this season, we have been seeing more priority thrown towards the duo lane. Maybe not the most priority compared to some roles. We've seen a lot of of shots over towards solo lane more often, not very early on, but dual lane with all of the massive farm that they've had allocated to their side of the map, there's been a lot of focus there.
There has been, less so in recent months because of some of the nerfs towards those camps, namely the incredibly side camp, that little pocket jungle next to the dual lane has had some nerfs, some of the farm nerfs as well to just the standard harpies, has made it a little bit more appetizing to look towards mid and that mid 3v3, which can net you greater scorpions, which is something the Camelot Kings love to go towards.
Oh, yeah.
Watch them play. These guys put so much more emphasis on greater scorpions than just about every other team in the league. Those mid harpies still very valuable. If you've got pressure in the mid 3v3, you can also transition to the oracles or even the pyromancer very early on as well. And that might be why we see a little bit more pressure there. But speaking of the hunters and both Cyclone Spin and Netrioid, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. Cyclone Spin is a very prideful player, and Netrioid is the soloingest player in the league. Put those two against each other, I think maybe we could see some sparks fly.
Yeah, for sure on that one. I mean, I remember we had the Titans in during their media day one time. We were just sitting down and talking with Cyclone. I think a fun fact that came out of there is that I think Scotty is the only hunter he has never played in a competitive game before, which is wild considering he is the player that has the most competitive gods in a game played, mostly because he's played multiple roles.
But he's
throughout
also
his
one of the
career.
lower competitive gods played so far this season. He's only played like 2 or 3 picks, I believe.
That is true. I mean, Medusa has kind of been the forefront of a lot of the Titans picks out here. But, I mean, if it's a pick that's working, no real need to kind of stray away towards that. We've been seeing a couple of more bans towards the god like Medusa in some of these picks and bans, no longer kind of defaulting to that second pick slot as much.
No, so I have to go a little bit deeper in the god pool. And as you said, Cyclone Spin, one of the most storied players in Smite competitive history, has also had the most individual unique god performances in Smite competitive history. Might be due to the fact that he's played a couple of roles in his time, and even when he was playing certain roles, was taking picks that were eclectic in it. I'm thinking of like Hoonbot Cyclone Spin solo in like season 3 or something crazy like that, or just going towards literally anything he wants. I think the legitimate stat is it's like 78 or 79 unique god played so far in the SPL, and well, when you get good at every single character, you figure out how to counter those characters, and it makes you even better at your bread and butters. So Cyclone Spin, certainly a threat that the Tartarus Titans have gotten their artillery.
And looking over here at the Camelot Kings, I mean, one of the discussions that was brought up by Captain Twig, by a lot of the players on the team, was upping that god pool specifically amongst themselves. We've seen Captain Twig take a lot of unique picks over into that jungle role. I mean, aside from, well, I say that, I'm now looking at his last 6 games played, and he's got 2 games of Hebo and 2 games of Kleena in there. But outside of that, we've seen Gilgamesh, we've seen Nemesis, we saw Bakasura previously, we've seen Hunbats. We've seen all kinds, no more. So far, Baka has not been having a great performance in the SPL as a whole here. But really, this whole matchup has been kind of changing up here. We saw Layers last year going towards a lot of the Lokis, the Camisots, and then obviously the auto attack warriors that were able to make it through Erlong Shen, probably the most notable of those ones.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Loki hasn't been more of a mainstay in Layers' god pool. I thought the performances on that pick were incredibly strong. Loki hasn't seen many changes since then, still has maintained that same level of strength. I know there are a lot of Loki elitists out there that'll say, like, yo, I missed aim strike, all right? What did they do to assassinate? Now it's a double proc instead of a singular. I think Loki is in a state right now where he is still incredibly strong, has a very potent level 3. His level 2 is still very weak, but transitions to level 5 very easily. Once you get Assassinate, it is pretty easy. I've been saying that a lot here, but it's true. To find those ganks, just rotate into a lane. Don't even need to get close. Here's the thing about how you're invisible and faster than everybody else. You are. And also, you've got a teleport that goes like halfway across a lane. Surprised that Layers hasn't decided to go back towards that pick. Maybe just doesn't fit into the draft style that the Titans like.
Maybe not. And kind of how echoing where Captain Twig has had a couple of copy picks out there, the double Habois, the double Clean out here. We've seen 2 Kabrakan games and 2 Awilish games in the last 6 here for Layers, and then a Shiva and a Nemesis splashed into there. So far in the last 6 games between both these junglers, only Nemesis has been shown of similarity, but as far as their top gods played, Erlong Shen definitely fits into both of those playstyles out there. The Loki, as we say here, for Layers, that was so well for him last time around. And then Hunbats on the opposite side there for Captain Twig. So I'll be keeping my eyes on really the jungle meta that develops between these. More often than not, when it comes to these picks and bans, we've been seeing one team ban Erlong, and that kind of forces the other team to ban Gilgamesh, or vice versa. One bans Gilgamesh, and then forces the other team to ban the Erlong, because we pretty much know at this point, when one of those 2 gods is left open, somebody is going to lock that in. It's usually going to be first pick.
And jungle is not the only role between these two teams that have got carryover. I would argue that Aurora and Genetics have got some pretty similar god pools. Recently, Khepri has been very highly prioritized by both of these teams, and for good reason, I would argue. Khepri essentially just a plug-and-play character that will help you out for the most part in just about every single laning phase. That second ability, very good at clearing waves, abduct, very good at punishing anyone who steps out of position, and, well, the elephant in the room, not Ganesh, still talking about Khepri, is Scarab's blessing. Just that, hey man, go as deep as you want in this team fight. Hey, go wherever you want. Go into the tier 2 at level 5. Doesn't matter, because I've got this death immunity ready for you, and even if you do die, well, you can come back to me, into my waiting arms of safety.
Well, we're ready to jump in now to the picks and bans for game number 1 between the Camelot Kings and the Tartarus Titans. First ban up is going to be the Cthulhu, but I want to also echo back to the Khepri pick. You know, Season 8, since we have obviously a lot more games to pull from here, we can get a little bit more concrete stats out of that one. Genetics picked after that god. 75% of his games was a win with Khepri in Season 8. Aurora, very similar. 13 of the games they picked it up, 9 of them he won, so almost that same 70-75% ratio there. So both of these supports not only like picking up that god, but are also very successful on them.
They have been. So far, bans rounded out. Not too much emphasis towards the jungle, as we had predicted here on the desk. Not even towards support. Instead, generalized standard bans, except for the Titans deciding to ban out this Neath. Generally, that's going to Big Man Tings. Generally, has seen some success for him as well. The ability to just, okay, well, I've got my Mannequin's Hidden Blade now. So here's the thing about how World Weaver is no longer just an arrow. It's actually a 50 cal beret that can just remove someone from the map. Yeah, the Titans don't want to deal with that themselves, so we'll ban it out. One ban, though, you had called for, the Erlong Shen from the Camelot Kings, limiting the Tartarus Titans jungler, Layers, who has just had wild success on this pick in the past. But with so many targeted bans already, there are a good deal of just priority picks still available. Things like the Yamoja, the Khepri that we had already highlighted, some very high-pressure junglers like Gilgamesh, all still abroad, all still up for grabs.
A lot of options here for the Kings, and they're taking their time to really think about what that first one's going to be, because as you highlight, there are a lot of other options that can go out there for the Tartarus Titans to take up. This Amuzin Kaba shot over towards Paul more than anything else. Yes, Big Man Tings would probably like to play that god if he can, with how strong the AMC has been. But it's not going to be maybe the one that we were imagining to be a first pick here on the Kings. It's going to be Medusa right out of the gate. I said it earlier, typically this guy's reserved for that second pick slot. You get your bigger priority option, things like your RDOs, your Mojas as the Titans are going, and then the opposite team can take this Medusa. But the Kings are going to take it first for themselves.
And it does leave up some of those picks that you were talking about still available to the Tartarus Titans. Yamoja locked in, generally going to Aurora. That has not seen just about any flex potential on the map. Will bring you a great deal of sustain in the team fight, essentially force at least one person from the Camelot Kings to shift up their relic selection. Phantom Shell, generally the answer to Yamoja in the lane. Otherwise, you're just stuck between two giant waves and nobody wants to be there. Kleena going to round out that second pick as well. And well, what does that bring? Flex potential to the soul lane or into the jungle. A ton of DPS, not only on enemy gods, but similarly to objectives, which I think is one of the mainstay strengths of Kleena, is her ability to, at level 10, legitimately, essentially solo out the Pyromancer, or even move over towards the Goldfree, give her 5 seconds and one other person. She might be able to remove that from the map very early on as well. And she's just slippery. Kleena is the only god in the game, besides Yanis, who can walk through walls, but she is the only god in the game who can indefinitely stay in walls. See, I remembered while I was having that conversation that Chernobog existed. Pedantix, though, he doesn't go in the wall. He stays on it because he's a shadow.
Yeah, he's a shadow like a fly on the wall, but a shadow on the wall here.
That's right.
Camelot Kings, Gilgamesh, and Cerberus are going to be the two picks they go in after this Yamoja Kleena. So Cerberus to deal with a little bit of the healing, a little bit of sustain that can come the way of the Tartarus Titans. Both these mid laners have to note out here that we have seen some hell kind of come out of both of these teams out here. Don't know if we'll necessarily see it this game around, especially with a Zeus picked up now by the Tartarus Titans. And that kind of goes in that same vein of AMC, where we've seen some Zeuses go untouched and just completely dominate a game. And we've seen others where if a pick like Thoth is left open, completely abuse this mid laner.
Yeah, Thoth has been the answer because he can just hit you from further away than you can hit him, and Zeus generally needs to get in that range. That said, the conversation of, okay, so Zeus sometimes feels untouchable or sometimes Zeus is just consistently dived, it's more so a conversation of, is the draft built around this Zeus to facilitate him, or has the Zeus established a lead? A Zeus with a lead feels untouchable because nobody wants to close gap on him because they'll just die. Shield plus Chain Lightning plus Detonate. Lightning Storm, if you need it, and you will not often need it on the divers, is going to be enough of a deterrent to just stop anybody from wanting to step up if you've got the lead, if you're 2 levels up. If you're 2 levels down, Chain Lightning detonate, I'm still at 50%, I'll just kill you immediately afterwards. So, a slightly volatile pick for the Tartarus Titans in mid, but piloted by Paul, I've got complete faith.
So far with the bans here in the second phase have been Iset Kepri and Daji Owilish. So the Kings aren't maybe fully set on this Kleena going over towards the jungle, maybe instead over towards the solo lanes in the hands of SOT, or maybe trying to force this Kleena to go into the jungle, remove some of those options for layers in that role specifically. Titans will answer back to the Medusa with the Cernanos. That's been a very common god that's been popping his way back up here. A lot of early game boxing potential back up against the Medusa. All of the buffs that have come his way have really jumped him up into favor here. But now the Kings have a couple decisions left to make. The Cerberus, we have seen Genetics pick it up quite a few times here. Variety also well-versed on this god, so still some options available to the Kings.
Yeah, we'll get a little bit of a better look at where the Kings are going to allocate
wow.
these gods as they go into the rest of their draft. Terra picked up.
Flourish.
You know, generally, traditional Smite knowledge just tells me, like, yeah, Terra support every single day of the week, but there is still a little bit of a conversation to be had of, can it be Terra in the soul lane? Do you want her to be a little bit more so of that dive tool for your team? In the soul lane, she'll deal a lot more damage. Will be easier for her to apply her pressure to Zeus. If you put Terra into support, she's more so going to be that anti-dive potential. Stop this Shiva from walking in so easily. Make sure the Kleena, once she does reveal herself in these fights, will have to work a little bit harder to secure some of these kills. If I had to guess, and it is a guess, I think the Camelot Kings will likely have Terra in support, and Cerberus in the soul lane, Gilgamesh in the jungle, and then Medusa and Persephone go to their roles respectively.
And then now we look over the Tartarus Titans with a Shiva now locked in alongside this Kleena. That then opens up the question of, is this Kleena going to be going over to the solo lane where we've seen, I believe, the most success from this god so far? I mean, from what I remember on the stat picked up here, Kleena with a 98% pick ban rate. I think only one game that we haven't seen her looked at all by any teams, and a 77% win rate in the games that she has been picked up here. But we've seen a lot more of the Shiva jungle, specifically out of the Valkyries. We did see Layers take that god too, so that kind of opens up the question, Mifflin, of which of those two is going to the jungle.
I've got a good deal more faith in Shiva in the jungle. In the laning phase, Shiva should be able to hold his own just about against anybody. He doesn't have necessarily more clear than some of these other warriors, but he does at least benefit from just having a wild amount of sustain built into his kit. I like to equate his ultimate to a pre-nerf meditation, just regenerating so much HP, regenerating so much mana, and matched up with blue buff, you're going to have it a little bit more often, thanks to that CDR, and you're going to have the mana to cast it a little bit more often as well. And then, well, Kleena, that's just great everywhere. It's a tough conversation. Suffering from success. Would I prefer to see her in the jungle over Shiva? Yes, but I would probably more so prefer to see her in the soul lane because she can dominate in the lane. She's got the greatest ability to just drop Pierce the Veil, go proxy away with another Pierce the Veil, and then get involved in the mid 3v3. She is very good at clearing a wave and then getting out of dodge and making sure she's making her stamp known on the rest of the map.
And especially with the potency that we've seen out of Soul Eater, that seems to be one of the most common first items picked up by that god, and things like Transcendence sometimes kind of makes its way in there. We've seen the CAD shield picked up quite a few times as well. So there's a lot of flexibility just in the build alone on that god. Really, no matter which role you throw it in, if you want to throw it towards the jungle or the solo lane. So we'll have to figure out and wait and see exactly where those two gods line out here, because it is still ultimately a question mark for both of these two teams. But do you give a distinct advantage to either of these two compositions when it comes to this game here, Mifflin?
Looking at the true 5-on-5 engagement, I would give ease of play advantage over to the Camelot Kings, but as far as relative power levels and an even state, it's close. This might be a 50-50.
Yeah, it's going to be a coin toss of a game here. Who's going to take game one, Kings or Titans? Let's go and find out.
Camelot Kings have looked near unbeatable over the last few sets. The Tartarus Titans have looked unbeatable at points throughout the year here in Season 9, and what a matchup we've got as the Kings and the Titans go toe-to-toe with Dolson, Trelly, and Doug for what could be, maybe what should be, Trelly, a 3-game set if both these teams play up to their potential.
Yeah, it really does depend on which sort of roster we get on both sides, but my attention immediately goes to the fact that, number one, Kleena got through in the solo lane for SOT, but Layers again, whipping out the Shiva. It's going to be interesting. You know what? I heard you guys talk about it on the desk recently. I call it Shiva too, and then Shiva. I think it's Shiva. I'm going to go with Shiva as well.
I say Shiva, so you and I are on the same page, and so we'll get one consistent pronunciation, at least through this set. Captain Twig on the other side of the jungle on this Gilgamesh. has been a big part of the Camelot Kings and their ability and their resurgence here towards the top of the SPL as of late. And so my expectations look towards this jungle. Layers has played this pick before, didn't get a win for the Tartarus Titans, but at least was still able to get active pretty early. Should be some pressure over here on the right side of the map, but Variety on the good setup in Cerberus and Captain Twig able to play Protector a little bit. Maybe won't see way too much. Over here on left, though, Genetics throwing back to one of his classic style supports. Not something that a lot of SPL supports have looked at, if at all, this year. Variety, I say he could play safe, but there is setup with Layers on the Shiva, and SOT off to a dream start. It's first blood to the Titans and their solo laner just a minute into game one.
This is really where this pick is going to shine. I mean, Shiva just has so much early displacement, level 2, level 3, that sort of thing. You're going to be able to pull back in the Cerberus, and that's an easy gank. I will say, again, looking at the matchup, I think Persephone, Big Man Ting, is going to have a very rough time. Usually, the only sort of self-peel you have is to drop that Grasp of Death and just CC, but Shiva has so much CC immunity, why are you even going to care about that? I think Layers should put some attention on the mid lane now that they've got first blood. It will go to SOT, of course, but Layers has that pressure. That assist gold is going to help out a ton as well, so I think Persephone is going to have a rough time trying to survive that onslaught.
Yeah, and I'm curious how Variety is going to look for the rest of this laning phase. You don't want to glean too much from just an early first blood, but had to use the teleport, and that is a hefty cooldown. Nearly 3 minutes on that teleport cooldown. So if SOT is able to get comfortable in this lane, has a little sustain early on in that build, has 3 health potions as well, there's a world where Sot can force Variety out, push him back to base, and just really start to make this lane look more lopsided depending on how the next couple of minutes go. That's a nice stun from Genetics. Aurora's Riptide only takes him as far as the crystal on the other side. Genetics won't be able to chase him down. Aurora with a Riptide nearly falls down on the left, but able to live despite a little bit of pressure from the Camelot Kings.
You love to see just how effective this Kalina can be in the solo lane with Elite. He's essentially invading blue buff by himself, and he can because of the safety. You can go into the wall at any moment. You really, as long as you have the beads available, you're not going to get CC'd before you try to escape, so very interesting there. We'll have to see what they're opting to do for as Netroid is going to get a really early kill in this lane. So much damage out of this Medusa.
Yeah, Camelot Kings able to capitalize on some pressure that was built up just a moment ago, and Aurora ends up going down. So, on one side of the map, the Camelot Kings able to bring things back. And I do look, Troy, I'm glad you bring up Persephone and Zeus and there might being some jungle pressure around the mid lane. And I think there needs to be, because Big Man Tings, I think, playing like the best mid laner in the league here as of late. A wide variety of picks, different styles of play, whether it's setup or knockdown. And so I think you might need to put some emphasis on slowing this Persephone down at some point.
Yeah, playing like the best mid laner in the league. Whether you agree with it or not, I mean, he's just looking phenomenal right now. The stats back it up. As we mentioned on the Fantasy League, he's pretty much carrying anyone who has him. And this time,
that's Mifflin.
It's Mifflin, yeah, who likes to brag about it. He saw the
worst case scenario for us, right? It's worst case scenario that it's Mifflin who's got BMT on his team, but maybe this is a set where the Titans have an answer. I mean, you can't count Paul out over on the other side. Again, we put some pressure, I don't know, maybe not the right word, some emphasis on Captain Twig and his ability to impact this game on the Gilgamesh. How about the Golden Blade start here, Trelly, for Gilgamesh, and it looks like into a bow after that. And so we're expecting a more auto attack style build already from Captain Twig on this Gilgamesh, not something I'm used to seeing.
Yeah, the Camelot Kings really do focus more on the farm game, right? They're going to get all the camps on the map. They're going to try to make sure their farm is exquisite. I would say Captain Twig just wants to clear the camps as quickly as possible. Here he goes, trying to make sure to confirm that blue buff for Variety, and he is going to do just that.
He is able to do so, and Variety needed a little bit of help here in lane. Soul Leader completed for SOT, and how about that for some chunk damage onto Variety, who will take the long way around to go pick up that blue buff. You can never be sure, right? I mean, there can always be a Kalina hovering somewhere in those walls, but Variety's going to pick up the blue buff. And that's what's important here in this lane now for Variety, especially with the first blood over to SOT. Just stabilizing. You get your teleport back. You have a little bit more breathing room now. If you don't want to miss a whole wave, you can go back, but timing his back pretty well here as Variety should be able to walk back to lane just fine if he doesn't want to channel that teleport, which he does after completing the Celestial Legion helm. So decent little power spike there for Variety. Chalice as well. And so I think the solo pressure maybe a bit slowed down. But I think you look at the playstyle that SOT brings, Trelly, and the mechanical skill that he has out of the solo lane. Of course I love watching Sot on the setup, the Warriors, the Guardians, things like that. But I think picks like this, especially with a bit of a lead, is where SOT can really separate himself as far as some of the solo laners go.
Yeah, when Cleaner starts making the rotations to the mid lane, to these 3v3 fights, making them 4v4 fights, that sort of thing, this is when Cleaner is going to seem very oppressive. I mean, when you have that full soul leader already stacked, you have a little bit of gold because you have your lead in your lane, you're going to be super annoying to deal with. We might see an engage here.
That's a brilliant double drop kick from Captain Twig, but that is all he's got. He will jump out and away. That's a good look. Doesn't result in anything, but Sot will follow Variety towards mid. Variety jumps up and over the wall. Paul without Lightning Storm will not finish off that kill. And there you go, relative strength. Sot just follows Variety on the rotation, and Variety couldn't do anything about it. SOT just had way too much damage there. Lightning Storm does get used by Paul. Big man Ting's low. And Layers has a nice chunk of damage as well. Jotun's Wrath completed, had Blink, but won't use it to chase down big man Tings. Tartarus Titans, Trelly, just feels like outside of that skirmish that happened on the left side of the map, playing with a little bit more pace, which is why I'm surprised to see the Camelot Kings with a slight lead.
Yeah, definitely carrying some swagger to their step right now. They are feeling very aggressive. I'm Layers 10 out of 10 times I'm blinking there, but he's a better player than me, so probably knew there was no real reason to go in for that engage. I think BMT already had the jump down. Maybe you just want to don't gamble with the fact that you're not very tanky right now, but I think looking at Twig's build again, this is why he's not getting that aggressive right now. We saw a small engage, but he's more so building just to farm. I mean, he doesn't want to go for these full damage plays. He's not building into it just yet.
Yeah, I'm assuming the bow is something he just picked up, and it happened for his quest item, and it just happened to work out with a Golden Blade start. And Captain Twig, up until Layers just reached level 8, Captain Twig was 2 levels ahead of Layers. So Golden Blade plus a beneficial quest item has helped Twig farm things up effectively in the first couple of minutes of this game. BMT and Twig standing on a ward here won't catch Paul or Aurora off guard as Genetics begins his rotations right on over. I know there were some mechanical changes around Terra that maybe dropped her out of favor with a few of the SPL supports, but I think Genetics is just so good on this god. In Earthen Fury, such a strong ultimate as well. That I don't, I think in the right scenarios, Trelly, that this Terra can still have her impact, which raises the question, is this the right scenario? It certainly is to find some damage onto Aurora as the River's Rebuke separates out this fight, but BMT can just dash right on over it. Winds of Shamash slows down Aurora. We have not killed off the Umoja. Petrify now used. Aurora ate 3 ultimates there, 4 if you count the Earthen Fury. Something had to kill off Aurora. And it's a big 4-man rotation. 4 ultimates used, and Aurora will end up falling.
Variety also made it over, so SOT is going to get a large amount of farm on that right side of the map. The Cerberus just trying to help out his team, but he's going to be getting a little bit behind and loses blue buff for making that rotation all the way over. Aurora, second death of the game now, not too far behind, just, it just stinks that you're giving the kill to Netrioid, and here's why. Look at the damage that Medusa is able to do. Cyclone Spin, sort of stuck on her tower right now because of all this pressure.
Variety used Stygian Torment there. SOT didn't have to use the beads, just out of range. Could have made things interesting, if nothing else. The laning phase slows down a little bit now for Variety. So an unfortunate rotation out from Variety, does grab an assist, but doesn't end up resulting in much more. All of this back and forth, as little of it as we've had, just a kill here or there, has resulted in effectively a dead even game. Remember, first blood to the Titans, so first blood bounty actually negated by a lot of the farm and the killing that the Camelot Kings have done. And starting to see more of the pressure centered around the mid lane, Trelly, where early we saw the scrapping in solo kill over on the left side of the map. And now with the 3v3s really starting to spark up, we're seeing both junglers with their impacts as the short bow sold off by Captain Twig to complete the Berserker Shield. So it does look like, even though short bow was just a quest item, Captain Twig is going to stick with that auto-attack style of build. Be careful here, Variety. SOT has got enough damage to do some tower diving. Won't complete it this time, but might stop the back of Variety He's got to pop that.
Here comes Twig,
Last
though.
Chalice. Twig is over here on the right side of the map. Stun connects. That's a great setup from Variety. Dropkick no good. Beads, perfect timing from SOT as Twig now low in the health pool, but SOT doesn't want to go into the wall. Pump fakes it almost. Blink forward from Captain Twig. It's a dash back through from Sot, and Sot won't turn it around. In the meantime, the Gold Fury has been pulled and secured by the Tartarus Titans, but the Titans have lost the fight over on the left side of the map as well. Netroid dies. And so it's Gold Fury plus kill for, at the moment, 3 kills for the Camelot Kings, and Detonate is massive. Paul with a double kill now, for sure worthwhile for the Tartarus Titans. This is a little chaotic, Trelly, over the last 30 seconds or so.
And now Pyromancer is going to go down. It's going to be
that's
close.
So no, Captain Twig dies, and Pyromancer won't die. This is the most absurd 30 seconds of Smite I've ever seen. We're fighting over on right. SOT nearly turns a 2v1. All the while, there's a team fight on Gold Fury where everyone dies, but the Titans win. And now Pyromancer kills everyone after Paul detonates randomly for a double kill. The last 30 seconds have a game's worth of action, and it does result in the Titans being a little bit ahead.
Yeah, if you missed anything there, pretty much the Titans now have a 1,300 gold lead, 1,000 XP lead.
Nice summary.
I believe it was a 3-for-1. 3 of the Titans died for just Netroid. Then Paul picks up the return kill because BMT goes a little bit too hard. And then we look back and we see Twig die to Pyro. I'm just trying to recap here. There was a lot that happened. If you weren't paying close attention, you might have missed it. But it all pretty much came down to a relatively even game. But I think if you're the Kings, you're hurting a little bit there, looking at the Pyro dropping.
Well, look, one thing that we missed because of all the fighting that was happening on right at the time was the fighting around this Gold Fury. And this just looks like a standard team scrap where the Titans pull it first, Trelly, but Genetics close by has Earthen Fury, throws up the wall. So Roar dies immediately, and so does SOT. But it looks like the Lightning Storm from Paul and the detonate damage was enough to secure the Fury. And here's the last bit of what happened. Man, the Pyromancer
and then
hurts.
the ult comes in
The
trying to
ult,
help.
yeah, for sure we're going to get it. And Variety has to drop out. Would have been a double kill for the Pyromancer. Then the Titans end up getting the Pyromancer anyway. This is all just net benefit for the Titans. As a little bit of CC and a stun connects from Genetics and Twig. But I'm glad that there's just kind of one clear winner as far as gold and XP go, because to summarize everything, the Titans come out ahead on the map, and they're now in the lead here by about 1,000 gold, and XP still pretty low, but technically in the lead there as well.
Yeah, and Paul definitely getting the better out of everything. 2-0 right now working on the Obsidian Shard. I mean, BMT does have the same build match, but has a level lead as well. I think the farm game, I think, was just a little bit better, and being able to get that solo kill and continue farming while Persephone was dead is always going to be the benefit here. So now there's a large target on the mid laner's back. I mean, Paul's going to do so much damage. We just saw the output of the triple detonate as SOT is going to get dove under the tower here, but Twig thinks better of it.
Yeah, SOT has beads. Wonder if Variety could have thrown out the Stygian Torment just to get those beads away from Sot, but elects not to do so, and Captain Twig wails away on the Totem of Coup. Usually after like flurries of action like that, we take a deep breath for a little while, wait for the next objectives to respawn. So you got a minute and a half and then some on the Gold Fury Trelly, and the Pyromancer a little bit further behind that. But things have stabilized. Remember, Twig was in the lead by a couple of levels over Layers earlier in this game. Layers is now caught back up in that regard. The Shiva has looked strong in the last couple of minutes, as both junglers still pretty close to one another. But a 500 or so gold lead for Layers out of the jungle as the ebb and the flow continues. Both junglers with the same relic, so Blink plus beads on the initiation for both. That's where I look for Captain Twig, with no beads down anywhere on the map right now. No fantastic targets for any ganks, and looks like we'll go back to farming.
Well, what I'm looking at right now is the fact that Netroid recognizes that they have one Phantom Shell already. The River's Rebuke from Aurora is going to be very annoying, the Yamoja walls specifically. They're going to want the Phantom for that, but Netroid also is going to pick up a shell, and here's an engage.
Well, it's a teleport over from Variety as well, who has the Stygian Torment still. Didn't use it over in the solo lane. Aurora again, CC'd for eternity. And this time it is Captain Twig who nabs the kill. Variety in on the assist with a teleport. What can you get out of it, though? Earthen Fury is down. You're going to get a little healing from the Monolith as well. SOT has only been able to rotate out and really impact a little bit towards mid. It's been more about keeping Variety out of the fights rather than really transitioning to these fights on his own. So SOT has that first blood kill, Trelly. Hasn't been able to convert it into rotations just yet.
Yeah, there hasn't been too many brawls on this side of the map, and Variety with the teleport can just get there quicker, obviously, so they get in and out before this clean is able to impact at all. But the point I was trying to make is there's a Zeus that is doing a lot of damage, and you've itemized into a shell. So no Aegis available for that detonate. You will have the second Phantom shell that you and Genetics can both use in your team fight and try to get your carries out of the walls, as SOT might be going to dive Twig. That's a lot of damage.
Twig dodges out most of the damage from both of the ultimate charges, but back's in a wrong spot. Dropkick is no good. Back beneath the tier 1 tower, SOT. Does he go into the wall? No, he blinks forward as Captain Twig jumps over the wall. Round and around we go, and it looks like Captain Twig will live despite SOT chasing him down.
Does he
go
know?
into the wall yet again. Will Twig back by his speed buff? Twig is going to go to the
No
speed
way.
buff. SOT chases him down, and there's a kill at the end of the day anyway. That is obnoxious. That is just what Kleedna brings. There is some conversion from an early game lead for SOT. And now the Tartarus Titans able to put pressure on the mid tier 2.
Did Variety not tell him that he was coming? There is going to be a tier 2 siege here. The ult goes down, but they have a lot of damage for this. They might have to back off, though. The whole rotation has come from the Kings, and now they might try to chase.
They might, but I think in a 5 versus 4, could be 5 versus 3 as Aurora is pulled back. Riptide will save his life this time. You know, really the Tartarus Titans are doing just fine, except for Aurora, because Aurora has taken all of the engages. Layers and SOT have died once, but Aurora has been the sacrifice while the rest of the Titans have done well. Captain Twig just now respawns. Fire Giant started up by the Tartarus Titans. Variety is low. Variety does not have Stygian Torment, but Genetics does have Earthen Fury. It gets used. Fire Giant's low. Detonate there and secures the FG. Now the Camelot Kings have to run for the hills. Genetics attempts to steal, unable to do so. The Titans pull a massive lead here. SOT gets another one onto Variety. 4,500 gold plus FG. As Netruade realizes the best he can do is farm up some towers.
SOT is going to continue being annoying, trying to steal away these back camps. I mean, with all the sustain that Kleedna has, even after a fight, you don't have to worry. But Layers is going to take the 1v1 against Netruade. Can't really catch up with the ult here. Some crits could go Netruade's way. I don't think Layers really wants to continue, but the H bar is so low.
My goodness, Netruade is tickling Layers right now. Shell helps, but has to back away because Captain Twig on a rotation over. Yeah, but in the meantime, what are the Titans doing? They're looking at right side Phoenix. They're looking at mid lane Phoenix. Layers, excuse me, is going to stop Captain Twig's back. Right side Phoenix, low. Grasp of Death out from Big Man Tings. Root's a good priority target, but the low health bars will be able to escape. In the meantime, we fight over on left as Captain Twig has dropped the Winds of Shamash in a 1v1 against Layers, who will escape. And so a quiet siege over on the right side of the map has culminated now in Paul being pulled back. But Variety's alone, and there will be no assistance.
This is still such an odd, I don't understand what's happening right now. It looks like they're trying to chase down the Titans. They did get the Phoenix, which is a huge win, obviously. The FG buff is still pretty long. You have a solid 2 minutes still left on your belt here, so if you want to continue the push. But the Camelot Kings still were trying that siege on the left. They do get the tier 2 tower as well. So just excellent map play by the Kings despite losing that Fire Giant. You know, you do lose your Phoenix, but it is, you know, if you're going to lose one Phoenix, that is the best one to lose. It is close up to Fire Giant, so you can still defend over there. But look at the damage numbers right now. Look how much SOT is able to do. He just backed, finished a full Heartseeker and a tier 1, possibly Ancile to stop out the Ghastly Breath from Variety. So just a lot of damage on this Kleedna pick right now. But an early Fire Giant, under 20 minutes, and they still have a lot to get from it.
Look, SOT's such a mechanically strong player. We knew there'd be some wind-up time for the Titans to adjust to a new play style, because Benji's so good. Doesn't do a whole lot of this, though, and SOT is just going to run down Genetics. It's a killing spree for the Kleedna. If the Titans win this game, and there's adjustments going on for the Kings going into Game 2, picking or banning Kleedna has got to be towards the top of the list, or a pick that can give this type of play style to SOT, because there has been no answer outside of one singular kill, but the rest of the game has been controlled by SOT. He is doubling up damage of everyone. Everyone in the game is beneath half of what SOT has been able to do. We just now cross over the 20-minute mark, and the Titans still have a full minute on their Fire Giant and could be considering an end. Petrify hits no one as Layer's second Dash dodges out the stun. Cyclone Spin eats the grasp of death, but the rest of the Titans rally around it. Knock it down quickly. SOT blinks over the wall, and it's Big Man Ting's being chased. The Variety will go down. SOT has another kill in this fight. And suddenly the Camelot Kings are crumbling. Genetics and Netrioid, the last two members alive. The Tartarus Titans don't look too worried. The Titans will look at the Titan, and game number 1, in all likelihood, barring a miracle, goes to the Tartarus Titans. So Layers has to dash away. SOT is still on the map. And the Titans take a 1-0 lead.
They're going to make sure to finish off Netroid there. Nope, the Titan is going to die too quickly. Still having Zeus ult after that siege is going to be insane. Lightning Storm is going to help take it down, as well as the fact that we've already touched on this, but Kleena, so much Titan damage, so much ability damage. They were able to shred that so easily.
My goodness, the Tartarus Titans look like a team possessed. SOT looks like a player possessed here in game number 1. We wondered if he'd be able to exploit that matchup over in the solo lane. The Kleena just got off to such a good start, felt near untouchable, was untouchable by the end of the game. And that was a masterclass at times on the mechanics of it, dodging in and out of the walls, chasing down Captain Twig. Camelot Kings get rolled over here in game number 1. Tartarus Titans, 1 game away from a 2-0. Can they do it? Gotta stick around to find out.
Game number one started out pretty nice for the Camelot Kings, and then it started falling apart about midway through the game. We got a Pyromancer kill this game, but ultimately at the end here, it's the Tartarus Titans who come out on top with the win at the end of it all here. And a lot of that coming off the back of the solo laner here. SOT had a phenomenal performance on this Kleena, and it's one of the reasons why we typically see this god banned away, Mifflin. It's not often that this god should be making it through the picks and bans, especially when it's going to have a performance like that.
Yeah, had a chance to brush shoulders with SOT on the way back into the room here, and he said, and I quote when asked about his performance, "That god's just good." And pretty fair analysis, I'd say. Kleena is a very dominant pick right now. Would be surprised if we see him allowed to play that one again. That said, how often is an objective getting a kill on a guy, onto a player as impactful as it was in this set? The Camelot Kings were controlling the early portion of this match. They were maybe not massively ahead, but certainly still were in the driver's seat. And then like one Pyromancer kill loses you a team fight, loses you the Pyromancer itself, and the Tartarus Titans were able to reestablish control from there, and things just got out of control. SOT, namely, just did whatever he wanted on the map. And this is what he wanted to do. And it was gross.
It was kill everybody on the enemy team. End with a 6.5 KD on this Kleena. Help out my fantasy team just a little bit, because God knows I need some help when it comes to my fantasy points out here. So Sat's able to put some big ones out there. And also just find a big win for his team out here. And I got to agree with you. There's no reason that he should get this pick again. There's no reason that if the Titans are second pick that they should even risk allowing this god to make it past the first wave of bans out here. Because the amount of damage that he's able to output compared to the rest of his team, it's not even close. At one point I looked up and he was at 19,000 damage, and then Paul was the next one behind him at like 9,000.
Yes, SOT solidly at the top of the charts here. Was able to rotate out a lane a little bit more consistently than what we saw from Variety as well. He got his impact on the map just slightly quicker.
Wow.
Look at the GPM. That is disgusting. A 146 difference between him and his lane opponent in Variety. Yeah, Kleena, very strong. Kleena with a lead, very strong. Kleena with that much more money, that's also pretty good.
And that much more damage, too. Triple the damage of his lane opposition. Nearly double the next highest player in the entire lobby, which is Netroid, who is just shy of 12K. And that's the testament. This is why this god had a 98% pick ban priority and a 77, now bumping that one up number in the win column here. I mean, this god is absolutely disgusting.
77 wins?
77 win percentage.
Oh, gosh.
Win percent. When
It's
this
like we
god's
haven't
picks, he's winning
77
77% of her game. God, if we had 77 games of clean already at this point, it would be absolutely absurd. Let's jump into picks and bans and maybe hope to see that this Kleena does not make it through again into the hands of SOT. Maybe the Kings will want to grab that one for themselves this time.
Yeah, in the first pick position yet again are the Camelot Kings, so maybe we'll be able to take that one for themselves. That said, I think the Camelot Kings will likely try and take it for themselves. I don't think the Titans let it through this time, because the Kings have got a little bit of a reminder of what Kleena is capable of, and it's a whole lot. There were portions of the match, though. I don't think the Kings need to salvage the entirety of their draft. Things were working out well for them. The duo lane was able to hold their own. Netroid even ending that match with a pretty decent performance, second highest damage in the lobby, as well as a 2-1 KD. So, got to look elsewhere for some adaptations. Already in the bans. The Kings, well, I think they addressed it.
Yeah, they will take the Kleena away. That opens the Emoji ban for the Titans and a Khepri pick for the Kings. We were talking about both of these supports prior having a roughly 75 or 70+% win rate on this god here. Genetics with the higher value of that one, at least in Season 8, as far as those stats are concerned. Not enough games in Season 9 to get a real concrete statement onto them just yet here. But it'll be Khepri for a first pick on the Kings. And now an Uller over for the side of the Titans being hovered right now.
It is. Ull has got some flex potential, unless you're talking about the Jade Dragons before today, because it does have flex potential for the Jade Dragons now as well. Pagon piloting it in the most recent set. Just a very consistent pick. Gets great pressure in the lane, transitions well into the late game, and now everything I just said also applies to Medusa. Here's the thing about the viable hunters right now. They do largely the same things. Difference between Ull and Medusa is that Medusa is a little bit more so team fight oriented and has a little bit less of that flex potential. So very likely, okay, now completely likely, now 100% likely Medusa going over to the duo lane. Zeus gonna hold it down in mid.
Yeah, so the backliners for the Titans already locked in. The Camelot Kings have quite a few picks they can go for. The Gilgamesh is still open if we want to see Captain Twig go back towards that one yet again. Or this Habwa that we've seen some bans
That's
for.
Twig.
This is a lot of success in the hands of the Kings. Twig specifically found a lot of success this time around, so I'm going to imagine that this one goes over to him with a Chiron locked in. Another one of those hunters that has some flex potential between that hunter and that duo, or between that mid and duo lane.
Yeah, I think I more so do like to see Chiron in mid. Sure, you can leverage early game aggression with the giddy up in the duo lane. You don't have to concern yourself with jungler ganks as often. But his potential to just be that lane bully in mid has similar matchup in Zeus as a Thoth in that he can just hit from a little bit further away, generally just with Centaurus, auto attacks, same range as every other hunter. But even just applying that Centaurus from a range is all the poke you need. Any bit of small bits of damage that find their way home onto Zeus, assuming that this is going to be Habwa in the jungle, is all that you need. Water Spout and the Crushing Wave should be able to finish it off like 80% of a HP bar at level 5 even. So Zeus going to play very cautiously. And speaking of the dive potential of Habwa, generally you put yourself out of position with Crushing Wave. That's the trade-off. It's a blink forward into a dash forward, essentially, that is also massive damage. But with Khepri, putting yourself out of position, not a massive deal.
And that's something that the Kings really like to run with these gods that typically need to put yourselves in a lot of danger, Cirquettes, and now Habwas, things like this. And then you have that Khepri as that safety factor to pull you right back in if you step a little too far up there. Achilles will be the final pick for the Tartarus Titans now to round out their top 3. And knowing kind of the history of this Titans team, this one kind of spells to me being more towards a layers pick, though there is still some potential for SOT to take that one over here. But I'm willing to hedge my bets that this Achilles might be going over towards jungle.
Yeah, especially considering generally you want to put your execute on the map where it can find impact against the revive, and Khepri being in support and SOT being a solo laner, they're not going to meet up with each other too often. Maybe a little bit more value if Layers decides to take that one for himself, but certainly still flex potential. We'll get a better idea of that as the rest of the draft rounds out. But as far as what Achilles' blanket will bring to a team, despite or in spite of role, it's going to be backline dive, consistent engagement CC, that stun from the shield bash is incredibly strong, a decent sustain in some of these team fights. Sustain not generally the answer to Habwa, who does not care how often or how piddly, how small your heals are going to be on Achilles, because Water Cannon does like 500, Water Spout does like 500, and like the ult does like 1,000. So, sure, heal for 40 per tick. That said, if Habwa is ever out of position, Achilles can definitely bring the fight to him.
As far as the bans are concerned, Titans will take away a couple of hunters, at least one flex hunter with that Omuzan Cobb, and then a Cernanos right after. So let's go down a little bit further into the God pool, though there are still some very notable ones that can find their way up here. Heimdall, even Izanami Chernobog, a couple of other ones that come to mind right away for the Titans. Meanwhile, the Kings will ban away Atlas, one of Aurora's favorite picks so far this season, a god that he's gone to multiple times throughout the stages of the season 9, and then Eset also going to be banned away, another popular support that's come through, though not really one I'd imagine Aurora himself going over towards.
Well, I mean, it fits his style in that I would argue Eset is a very aggressive support. I mean, we don't have the most data points on Aurora specifically playing it, but certainly one I think he is capable of, and the Kings tend to agree with that Eset ban. What does generally fit into Aurora's God pool, and one that I would expect to see from him pretty consistently, is this Bacchus lock-in. A very aggressive early game support that's got great scaling come late game. Still one of the, if not the tankiest gods in the game at level 20 once you start getting some points in a chug as well. So this is a very aggressive composition now from the Tartarus Titans. The style of draft is have Medusa join up with that front line, have Achilles and Bacchus be there in the spearhead. Trust that your Zeus can fight alone in the back line. Might be hard to trust that when he's laning up against an Osiris, or not laning, lining up rather, up against an Osiris, who's going to have a good deal of damage mitigation thanks to that tether, as well as his passive.
If you want to
Zeus.
be a pincushion.
Okay, I don't want to talk about Zeus anymore. What I do want to talk about is this Artemis lock-in.
Talk to me about it. It's
interesting. Slow immunity now on Vengeful Assault. That's one of the most recent changes Artemis has seen, as well as being able to target people specifically with the ultimate. An inner cone with the Caledonian Boar allows you to pick out individual members, and you can kind of control the RNG of where Tusky's going to run in some of these team fights. But the slow immunity, I think, certainly comes into play up against what we're seeing already from the Tartarus Titans. Slows galore, Zeus, Medusa, all going to be able to be immune out at least a little bit by Artemis. Has great late game scaling, double hunter composition, means your siege is going to be generally pretty strong. Objective clear, very strong as well. And then you've got Habois to be the secure, to be the finishing move for the rest of your team. I think the Kings have got themselves a very unique draft, but they have put a massive target on one player's back, and it's whoever's taking this Artemis. Probably
Let us
Netrioid.
rejoice
Most
in a new
likely here. It
beginning.
was a Horus hover, but now a Shiva lock-in for the Titans. If history is any indication, the Shiva would be going into the jungle with Layers, but at the same time, Layers has also been known to take the Achilles into the jungle. So that now leaves up the coin toss of which of these ones does go into Layers' hands. Any particular one that kind of pops out to you more? I know you talked about the Achilles one to be more active early via the way of that execute to deal with the Khepri, but with how much we've seen Shiva go into Layers' hands, it seems like it could go either way.
J-Mac, I feel similarly to Shiva as I do to Gilgamesh. If it's locked in, I
Got
want
it.
it in the jungle.
All right, so let me
Full
add that
stop.
one to my notebook real quick
Yeah.
of things to not ask which one
Yeah.
goes where for you.
Yeah, Mifflin thinks Gilgamesh and Shiva are junglers. Just blanket statement.
Got it.
I just think that, sure, Shiva can solo, but it's not as strong a solo laner as Achilles. The only benefit of taking Achilles into the jungle in this draft is having him being able to limit some of those Scarab's blessings, but how Scarab's blessing is applied is going to be a little bit more difficult in the early portions of the game. Generally, early on, Khepri is using it as a peel tool instead of using it to facilitate dive, which means that the Achilles will have to be diving himself, and, well, a jungle Achilles not generally tanky enough to be doing that. So I think you'll get similar value of being able to deny the revive from Khepri even through the soul lane. And then Shiva is just so much better in the jungle as opposed to solo, that relative power. I think you should just have him there regardless.
And one of the problems that we saw for the Kings as far as kind of the mid to late game team fights came against the Titans in game number 1 was being able to get to this backline, being able to find Paul, to find Cyclone Spin in the midst of these team fights. Do you think the Kings with this Osiris and this Habois have found their means of being able to get there and finally put some real threat on these carries?
The dive potential is interesting from the Camelot Kings in that there's two avenues of play I can see the Kings approaching with this style of composition. You could have Osiris go into the backline and just distract the Tartarus Titans. It's something we see from SOT a whole lot when he plays Osiris. Even said so in an interview, like, hey, I go into the backline, I pop my tether, I make sure my pass is procced, and I'm not even like dealing damage. I'm not even throwing my abilities out. I don't care. I'm just there to be tanky and be that threat and create some space. And your Osiris can do that for you here with the Kings. And then the rest of the draft, Chiron, Artemis, and Habois, are going to be very good at shutting down the front line. I know Box is tanky. I know Achilles and Shiva are pretty tanky targets, but lining up against a double hunter composition, single target, it's pretty clear where the Titans dive is going to be going. It's in a straight line at you. So the Kings could do that and have that be the case, or they could dedicate everything to the dive and just have Habois blink in, water spout, go into the ultimate, and make sure that Khepri's nearby to peel out.
We'll see if the Kings can keep up their 3-game set streak here, or the Titans going to end it with a 2-0. Let's jump right in with Dave and Trelly.
This would be quite a statement by the Tartarus Titans if they are able to snag a 2-0 set win over the Camelot Kings. A set win in general over the Kings right now would be a statement, but in 2-0 fashion would definitely be surprising. The Camelot Kings, Trelly, they return to some of what's worked, and that's Captain Twig on the Hebo in the jungle, Big Man Tings on Chiron out of mid. And then some new. Not so much for Netrioid in general. We saw plenty of Artemis last year, especially for Netrioid. But so far here in Season 9, not a pick we've seen a lot of.
Yeah, and the double hunter composition, I feel like usually when you do this, you're trying to go hunters that have a strong early game, like Chiron Medusa or Chiron Cernos, but now Artemis not really going to want to fight until a little bit later, one of those harder carries as the game moves on. So the question is, what is going to stop this duo lane from getting rolled over, right? You have a Bacchus and a Medusa, arguably two of the strongest early game hunters. So we're going to have to see how they're able to play this. Good trap already onto Aurora is going to stop some of that early aggression.
Yeah, feels all right for Netrioid. Cyclone Spin will dash forward and try to return a little bit of damage. I think Captain Twig, again, for this Camelot Kings team, needs to be a lot of the knockdown. Not so much the setup. I mean, setup, of course, helps, but you have the crushing wave, the water spout, the water cannon, in the way that all flows a little bit better now with not rooting yourself when using the knock-up. Captain Twig can make a difference. Can you make a difference, though, when the Tartarus Titans are going to blink on you at level 2? That is difficult for Captain Twig, and it is another first blood to the right side of the map, this time It's Layers who's off to a first blood start.
Yeah, SOT now is going to get very active with this lead here. Take a look at that build. The Sigil is going to be the start here. When we did have the Titans in for Media Day, I talked to him about some of these solo lane strats, and he said Sigil is very slept on. We might be seeing the exploding Sigil upgrade, but look at these back camps. They're invading Twig again.
Yeah, thought about it, but Layers safe enough in the double dash to get out alive. Uh-oh, solo kill alert, but no. Neither SOT nor Variety will fall down. Captain Twig die again here. The knock-up important. Layers does not have Blink, but Twig does have a tier 2 tower. If nothing else, Trelly.
He's staying.
So Layers is close by, waiting for the cooldown. Layers is just slowing down. Yeah, he's just slowing down Twig's back. I mean, Layers is also not building up much farm, but the speed buff is going to come back up.
He
Twig
knows.
sticks around. Is BMT going to go help out? No, Paul.
Paul's going to go for the gang.
Paul is considering stopping his back again. Twig blinks forward, and the speed buff secured by Captain Twig. As Paul kind of awkwardly positioned between the tier 1 and the tier 2 tower. So it's not a speed buff invade that goes right for Layers, but now it's a red buff invade being looked at by the other 2 members of the Titans who are over on the left side of mid. This one does go down, but now Layers is in an awkward spot. Will knock up no good. Will be some damage on the other side. So red buff invade is the culmination of all of that. Titans still technically ahead.
I really think that Layers also thought that Paul was going over. Like, I thought Paul was coming over. I'm like, oh, this speed buff's going to go down. But they're like, you know what, man? I can't pick up that speed. I know you want speed, but I want red. So we're going to invade that instead. Paul doesn't make the rotation over to speed. Luckily, though, Layers jukes out the water spout and is able to make it out there. He probably could have fallen for their transgressions, but making sure that Aurora now gets a red buff around his waist is going to help out in this laning phase, at least in the duo. And this purple buff now is able to get looked at here. Just kidding, it's already down. So Netroid is going to be able to pick that one up for free.
Yep, he'll head on back, snag his purple buff. Would like to see a turnaround game from Aurora. Despite a Titans win, it felt like Aurora was the sacrifice more times than not, was not allowed to operate in game number 1. And maybe that was the plan all along. Aurora was going to eat all the CC, and then the rest of the Titans were going to be able to win those fights. An aggressive pick early for Aurora here, but also one that becomes so tanky later on in the game in the Bacchus. So if the Titans go late, they'll still have some strong picks on their side as well. Captain Twig at level 5, Trelly. That's where my eyes go. We have delayed our way there just because he's been forced out a couple of times, has missed some of that back camp farm because Layers has remained aggressive. It's looking for the setup. And we saw this pick with a Neath, a World Weaver into a Crushing Wave. It was just a kill over and over as Aurora hits level 5. Netrioid drops the trap. Petrify out! Netrioid needs the shell, but now it's Tusky out on the stun, and Cyclone Spin and Aurora both get stunned. Neither jungler immediately on this side of the map. And so exchanging blows are both duo lanes now, but everyone remains on the map. Or do they? Aurora abducted into a trap. But he's tanky enough already to live. He just needed a little bit more damage. Now Layers is over here on left. Layers has Blink, but won't commit.
I was going to say, like, right at the level 4 mark, we got to see some sparks fly, but mostly it's because Genetics loves to play for this Obelisk. He likes to get aggressive in the lane right before the Obelisk spawns in, so he can walk over, steal some offerings, make sure he gets that Interceptor. Even last game, when the Kings lost, we saw this Terra get aggressive at this time because he wanted that Interceptor. He wants that extra damage. Right now, though, we saw the opposite. The Titans got very aggressive. Once Netroid ticked over, we saw the ultimates fly. Some beads were used. Luckily, nothing happened. No kills were able to fly, but this time around, the Kings are going to have to work very hard if they want that Obelisk. I mean, it's very close right now, but the Titans have more offerings. So will Genetics get aggressive and try to steal them away? We'll have to see. Not really in a position to do so right now, especially on a pick like Khepri.
Yeah, maybe. Outside of just a few seconds, both sets of beads down for both carries, and then about 20 seconds or so separate the shell cooldown for both of the support. So Aurora is getting a little bit more aggressive here. Provided you know where the jungler is, you'd assume you'd be able to belly flop on out of here.
One more.
Just needs one more. Oh no, he's being abducted. And he will belly flop away. But it looks like the obelisk was completed nonetheless. And so a small moment that helps out for the Tartarus Titans. And Aurora will be able to go back and pick up the Interceptor just fine. A small gold lead is built up here. Remember, it's just the one kill for the Titans, though. Many attempts thrown out. 500 or so gold for that first blood bounty. And then the rest of it just through good old-fashioned farming. Nothing to write home about just yet. It's these next few minutes where this game really starts to change. Big man Tings has got the Transcendence. That'll take a little bit of time to stack up. Genetics hits the root onto Layers, who immediately uses the ultimate for the CC immunity. Necessary to do so when you see how low that Shiva got prior to going into the ultimate. And so one ultimate burnt on Genetics' first rotation out of duo.
I remember last game, though, around this time, a little bit later maybe, but Variety was able to use that teleport that he has, that SOT did not opt into this time, to make a rotation to mid and help out with the fight. This time around, as we do see a Lord of the Afterlife, I can't imagine there'll be a solo attempt here, but it looks like a lot of damage is coming out from this Osiris.
SOT is just baiting in Variety here at this point, but Variety knows blink forward from Layers, pull back in, Fatal Strike, easy as you like. Tartarus Titans bait in Variety, and it's another kill on the right side of the map for the Tartarus Titans. This time SOT was close to going down, but Captain Twig has not been there before the Titans just yet on the rotations in, and so another kill drops over to the Titans right around the time the blue buff is spawning up. So we're considering maybe something on the Captain Twig here. There's a ward down, but I don't think it's one that Captain Twig had down on his side, and they will leap on Twig. The right side of the map has been a graveyard over the last couple games. That was a Tartarus Titans ward, and so Twig had no idea what was going on there, and the Titans will pull about 1,000 more gold in the last couple minutes.
I mean, Variety has teleport, and already used it, so I had to run the whole way back to lane. So that Lord of the Afterlife we saw right as we panned over to solo lane tells me that Twig said, hey, this is a good gank opportunity. We should go for the kill. But they had no idea 3 members of the Titans were coming over. That's got to be a lack of communication, or as you mentioned, the ward coverage, because not only was Layers on the way, but Aurora was also on the way. They pick up 2 kills now into that solo lane, and it's going to be a lot harder for this Osiris to get tanky online quick enough, because the rotations are going to start to happen. We're looking at a bigger gold lead now, a solid 2K, and the Gold Fury is still up to be looked at. If you are the Tartarus Titans, you have this lead now, and there's a great opportunity to try and push it.
Yep, SOT with Blank, Variety with TP. And so the left side of the map that has not seen much action yet could be the next battleground here between these two teams. Unfortunately for Twig, the Habois has been kept in check up to this point. SOT has got some good damage on a Variety. He gets out of tether range. You'd figure he would keep that trade going, but knows that Captain Twig is somewhere on this side of the map. So all you got to do is get into execute range, knock up, jump in, crushing wave, but Fatal Strike is good from Sot, stun on a Variety. But the Water Hands on the other end, good enough to clean up the kill. And now there is a fight happening over around this Gold Fury as Layers dodging out the trap, but Big Man Tings rotates in from the mid lane. Genetics was left alone all this time. Then Layers buys time against both of the carries. So across the map ends up being a 1-for-1 trade. Could get worse though as Big Man Tings has jumped on. As long as Cyclone dodges out the damage, Big Man Tings will be killed off, and Aurora adds his second of the game.
And they are not going to be able to go for the Gold Fury there. Centaurus stalled things long enough to get the HP bars down, and now not quite enough to go for that Gold Fury, but Netrioid was getting pretty low there as well, so I think it could have been worse for the Camelot Kings. There could have been a few more kills happening there. I think the Scarab's Blessing went down. Genetics was just trying to face tank, make sure that they weren't able to just burn down the objective with the Lightning Storm, and then when Kepri's in there by himself, can't really defend himself. The carries leave you hung up to dry, unfortunately. But again, the objective is still available. So now the Camelot Kings can regroup and try to siege a defense here onto this Gold Fury. But they're missing some key ultimates. Tusky not available for a bit. Yep. Scarab's Blessing, not even crushing wave. So it's going to be interesting. And oh my God, it's getting shredded.
Yeah, that is going down quickly. And you should have the confirm from the Titans. And they do. Cyclone Spin goes low here. But the Tartarus Titans with enough confirm. Yeah, it's the detonate from Paul that grabs it. You know, yeah, the Camelot Kings could have regrouped, but the Titans came out ahead on the left side, so the Titans were even a bit further ahead going into that objective. And definitely confirmed now that the Gold Fury goes down. Tusky
is Aurora even getting hit?
Stuns Aurora, I guess that happened, but Captain Twig is around the backside, has crushing wave. Goodbye, Cyclone! Oh my goodness! Cyclone's been at least able to turn around to kill, but now Captain Twig takes a tower shot. This would be devastating if Aurora had Intoxicate, which he is very close to having back. It would be a not worth tower dive, not just yet. Aurora doesn't have Blink, has belly flop, but does not have the range to connect back through. Paul will realize that The backs are going to roll on in. Ends up being a 1-for-1 trade on a great play from Cyclone Spin to turn around the tower dive.
As far as I'm concerned, that was a huge brain play by Netroid. That trap stopped Paul. He wasn't able to rotate the whole way in. He got stopped in the jungle. They see the damage tick, like, hey, someone's coming, let's back quickly, and they make it out just in time. Captain Twig, though, I think realizing how much tank stats are on the map right now, going into an Obsidian Shard already. I mean, Aurora just was not taking damage there, of course, from Netroid even, but they couldn't kill, even with Hebo damage, so they're going to have to back off and just say, hey, we need some more protections right now because there are some tanky targets on the map. Looking at Variety's build, though, not the Frostbound Hammer. That's going to be the Runeforged Hammer.
Yeah. And Runeforge makes a difference when you're able to connect with some of that CC and then snowball off of that in these fights. As the Pyromancer, worked on by the Tartarus, or the Camelot Kings rather, confirmed by the Camelot Kings as well. Crushing Wave used defensively. So is Lord of the Afterlife as the Titans rally around the right side of the map. 4 members from the Titans are here. Genetics CC'd, and CC'd to death he is. Pyromancer for support ends up being the trade. Slight uptick for the Kings, but mitigated by Genetics' death.
Yeah, I think they're going to be happy that Genetics was the only one to fall there. I think if Twig's Blink came out a second later, would have been caught out by the Shiva Ultimate, and then you're kind of stuck. But you are going to lose your Tier 1 tower as well as the blue buff goes down. But Pyromancer and support for Tier 1 towers. Still not a terrible trade if you're the Camelot Kings. Looking for any avenue back in the farm game right now. You want to get to late game. Again, this is a double ADC comp with a Habois. So late game, you're looking very solid. Right now with this lead, you got to make sure you're being very careful as BMT is going to get you up out of there. Paul still has a lot of damage right now.
He sure does. Between Divide Ruin, Spear of Desolation. Paul is doing just fine. The Camelot Kings, and namely Big Man Ting's, able to push down that Tier 1 tower and get things back on the right track. Not considering a chase down on a Variety, but the only times we've seen that successful so far is when Layers or Twig has been over on the right side of the map. You know, I've enjoyed watching the different junglers here at the SPL level kind of figure out Shiva at their own pace, and it seems like Layers has got a pretty good grasp on this pick. The 1 or 2 games that we've already seen it for the Titans wasn't the most impactful, but I think smart to be playing around it in the way he is. SOT, I'll take that Greater Scorpion to go, please, is what he's thinking. And so the Tartarus Titans have played around their jungle very effectively. 5 of 7 affected kills for Layers. But really Aurora, Trelly, I think, has had a big turnaround game on this Bacchus where, you know, 1 and 4, something like that, over in game 1. And now on this Bacchus, 2-0-4 with all but 1 kill having Aurora's name somewhere on it.
Yeah, and now look at the way he's itemizing as well. It's going to be so difficult to kill this Bacchus. We already talked about the pen that Captain Twig has to go into just because of it, but the double Hunter composition facing off against Sav and Breastplate, as there is going to be a dive attempt here. The tower is still hanging on by a thread. Is Captain Twig's going to go from behind?
Captain Twig gets the water hands. Water carpet no good. Knock up no good. Watch out. Sod has a lot of damage, but Crushing Wave counters out the Fatal Strike. There's a rotation behind all of this, though, as Layers looks for Twig, and Twig will blink over the wall. And so a well-executed dive from the Camelot Kings keeps things interesting. Variety is low, though. Paul now taking low himself. And so Tier 1 tower and dive. Dust your hands off, Camelot Kings. They've made this game more interesting.
Yeah, and Paul's red buff is going to be stolen away as well. Oni Fury is about to spawn in here. The gold lead climbing back into favor of the Kings. Still the Titans having the lead, but they're inching ever closer as it was a much bigger lead at the moment. So Big Man Tings going into that Titan's Bane as Paul just finished the Obsidian Shard, so a lot of percent penetration for these mid laners as well. This Oni Fury fight is going to be a huge tell as to what the late game fight is going to look like, and right now Variety has already made the rotation over.
Yeah, BMT would love to have that Titan's Bane fully finished going into this fight, but still a decent stat stick at Tier 2. And it's the 3-4 item Chiron where you see the Centaurus is just melting down the back line, especially with Bluestone, especially with how squishy Paul and Cyclone Spin are at this point in the game. Layer's gone more hybrid in his build, as we so often see Shiva do. So Oni Fury melting on through. You expect Paul to confirm this one, but look at the damage on the back of the fight. As Fatal Strike has to be used defensively, Variety is knocked up, realizing he was alone with 4 members of the Titans. And Detonate once again confirms the objective. Paul uses his Lightning Storm on it. And as such, the Titans realizing a big piece of team fighting utility is missing. Big Man Ting sent some damage that way. but unable to out-secure the detonate damage from the Titans, though. Tier 2 now being worked on. Tusky goes down. Captain Twig crushing wave out. Big stuns from Tusky. Stuns everyone on the Tartarus Titans, and that has fully slowed down the re-engage.
Yeah, when you see the 5-man Tusky, you don't really want to try to chase into that, but Paul is feeling a little bit, no, the Pyromancer is actually about to spawn in here, so the Titans are going to give up on that. But they're not going for the Pyromancer, Dave. They're going to pull this Fire Giant.
Wow, the Titans, they've got damage, but they do not have Lightning Storm. They will have Detonate, but the big AoE ultimate is not here. Variety walks in, and Variety will hover on out as Genetics is enraged with the Scarab's Blessing. But now you don't have that for the team fight. Petrify used by Cyclone Spin, but look how low the Titans are. Shiva ultimate used for sustain. As SOT looks for the stun, doesn't get it. Variety is still low and has to use his ultimate to jump on out of this fight. But in go the rest of the Titans, and Variety dies all the same. And the Tartarus Titans roll over the right side of the map instead of Fire Giant eyes for Tier 2.
They do have the Oni minions. If they did want to go to a Fire Giant, they're on a timer. They have the teleport for Variety if they really want to try and defend, but it looks like now they're going back to the Fire.
They might. This was Netrioid considering here a Tier 2 tower push. Something the Titans will be well aware of. As Pyromancer thought about for a second, and thought about yet again, but Fire Giant is what sticks. Cyclone Spin, Pollen Aurora, dealing damage to the objective, while two members of the Camelot Kings getting closer, getting in range. We have seen Khepri steals before, and Genetics will look to repeat some magic. Fire Giant goes low. Fire Giant confirmed by the Titans. Captain Twig can't win his 1v1 as Paul turns around the damage. A big swing in game 2 for the Titans.
And now they're going to find BMT as well. Was he caught? I think that was a lazy back, or SOT just found him out and was able to stun him. But unfortunate for BMT. Now you have to try and defend 3v5. It looks like this right Phoenix will be the target of this Fire Giant push, as Layers is just going to ult to make sure the whole team is healed up here. A great use of the Shiva ultimate, because they're not going to try to fight. They want this Phoenix, and they want to get out.
That's a full 5 grouping from the Titans. They'd love to go back and spend up some of that gold, but there's enough dead on the Camelot Kings that makes this easier, and it's a smart play, I think, from Genetics and Variety. Maybe throw some damage in there, but if those two die, suddenly you're looking at a potential Titan siege for the Titans. This is what makes the SPL so hard to figure out this year, because the Kings going into this set looked like the best team in the league. And the Tartarus Titans at times have looked very good, but at times have looked completely outclassed in their sets. It is such a hard lead to figure out, where every team, it feels like, has the potential to win against any other team. And if this result holds, I would not have expected a 2. I expected a 3-game set going either way. But the Titans have just outclassed the Kings in both games up to this point, barring a turnaround from the Camelot Kings.
Yeah, and I would argue it's stemming from the fact that, number 1, Layers has been getting very active early, and number 2, Captain Twig has not. He's been trying 2 and 3, not a terrible stat stick, but this has been largely ineffective right now. I mean, Layers has been making sure to put Variety down very early on, get SOT ahead, and then SOT has been hard carrying. I mean, the cleaning game, do I even have to mention how hard he was doing there? But even in this game, this Achilles, a lot of damage. Look at the player damage once again. He gets these leads in solo, and then he's able to just make sure that everyone feels the gold that he has.
Yeah, triple 2s, the KDA for SOT doesn't, I think, reflect the relative impact he's had. His Variety has stuck around in this game, hasn't fallen too far behind, if really behind at all. Where in the moments you can still see the macro play that the Camelot Kings love, keep them more relevant in this game. Lots of Tier 1 towers down, both mid lane towers down as well. Some of the gold that the Kings have been able to find on the map keeps this game a little bit closer. There's going to be a Gold Fury in just about a minute, but 1.5 minutes remaining on the Fire Giant buff, as the final tower of the game will be walked at by the Tartarus Titans. Variety is around the backside of this fight. All it takes is one big crushing wave, but you're only 3 items in. If you're Captain Twig, Ethereal Staff, Flat Pen, and Percent Pen, can't count out Twig just yet.
Yeah, the one-shot potential is still definitely there, but the right side Phoenix is down, and SOT is in mid lane right now, so it will be a bit of a split, but Variety is going to have to ult out here.
Variety will ult out, but only as far as SOT, who's got a whole lot of damage awaiting the Osiris on the other side. Mid lane Phoenix being sieged. Aurora belly flops over, double intoxicate. One of the drunk members of the Kings is Twig, who has to crushing wave away. Mid lane Phoenix gone, right side Phoenix missing as well. And with 50 seconds left on the Fire Giant buff, the Titans can consider a left side siege.
They still have Lightning Storm, they still have Fatal Strike and Petrify. 3 very Very nice team fight ultimates that are available. One
might
more
be the
Phoenix
most
to
important.
go. I would say so. Grouping up right now for Paul's ult would be detrimental if you are the Camelot Kings. It won't be a Phoenix defense, it'll be a Titan defense. So,
And watch out for Fatal Strike with the Scarab's Blessing as well. That's the only ultimate that the Camelot Kings still have, but a great abduct onto a Roar. But Variety is the one who goes down on the other side. Captain Twig is low. Scarab's Blessing rolls right on through. Lightning Storm down, and it's massive from the Titans. And what looked like might just be a Phoenix Siege turns into the game. The Tartarus Titans roll over the Camelot Kings in 2. Paul seals the deal with 3.
you can't group up underneath your Phoenix when there is a Zeus with ultimate available. Just so much damage output. That's why Zeus is so strong right now. I mean, of course, everyone from the Titans looked good. Aurora was setting up so much, making sure these crushing waves couldn't go down onto the carries. But if you're able to protect this Zeus, that's the kind of damage output we can expect to see.
All right, here's my challenge. And it's just because I'm a little extra spiteful to Myth today for some reason.
All right.
Before the first desk ended, the desk ended on the first set.
Right.
We were talking about the Camelot Kings against the field. And Myth repeatedly says, who's beating him right now? Who's beating him right now? And I said, I don't know, any team on a good day. Listed off some teams. So give me the clip of Myth saying who's beating him right now a couple of times. And then the 2-0 victory screen for the Tartarus Titans. That's my task to somebody out there because Myth just can't buy himself any wins today. No, it's no fluke. It's fluke or not, the Titans win 2-0 over the Camelot Kings. We'll head to break, and then Myth will defend himself on the desk coming up next.
far through history, at least in this season, the Camelot Kings have naturally gone to 3 games, but the Tartarus Titans are going to be the first ones to put that and halt it in its tracks right here. It's a 2-0 win for the Tartarus Titans here in game number 2 in our second set of our day. An impressive game across the board for these guys here. SOT really gets to step it up this week during his sets. Last time around, SOT was kind of the fodder for a lot of those matchups here, but when we get matchup, I mean,
he's right there.
There was a game where he was like 1-5 at one point, and that's just because everybody was targeting him, but the rest of the team stepped up.
He's right there.
I know he's right there, but this time he's able to step up. He's able to play the game, not be the target every single time, and we get to see what kind of an impact he makes out here.
I've gone on ad nauseum saying that SOT is an incredibly mechanically talented player, and that rings true here in this set. I mean, just dominance in both games 1 and 2 from the, all right.
Okay, what do we have?
I don't even know who this is. Like, why are they even showing this guy? It doesn't make any sense.
You know, we see a circle of the Camelot Kings. Whoever made this prediction is completely off. I'm glad they didn't try and ever bring up any of my predictions on
Aries
there.
No Chains. What a bot, you know?
I don't. That honestly sounds like it would be the name of one of our AIs that we put in the game.
Yeah, and so whoever made that can feel real bad about it. But this time around, the Tartarus Titans were able to take a convincing 2-0 victory over the Camelot Kings, and I think convincing should be the operative word here, because there was honestly not a moment in the actual set where it was in question. In both games 1 and 2, the Titans had complete control all the way across the board. SOT, of course, deserves all the praise that we can heap upon him, despite your attempts to drag him down earlier on. But I think Layers similarly needs to be given that same level of praise. Takes a very volatile pick into the jungle in Shiva and performs on it admirably. Sets up for the rest of the team and creates space for Paul to do whatever he wants. 3-0-3 for him. Creates space for not genetics. He didn't create any space for him. For Cyclone Spin on the other side to do whatever that he wanted as well. These are always the hardest types of games to break down because of how one-sided they are. It's just everything the Titans did turned to gold.
And I think you're right to bring up Layers, especially that very early game. I mean, first respawn of the speed buff, we have Layers chasing out Captain Twig in the middle of the map there. And then he goes back and starts working on the speed buff, and, well, he didn't end up stealing the speed buff away, but the amount of time that he kind of wasted in the early game up against Captain Twig, who wasn't able to really get the ball rolling in this game, only 8,400 damage on that Habois. On the opposite side here, SOT top of the damage chart, Cyclone right behind him on his team. Netro, though, notably also able to put up some strong damage on this Artemis, a god that oftentimes struggles against these very heavy CC-style comps, these very dive-heavy compositions.
Yeah, props to him, but major props to SOT, right? We got to give it to him. Maybe talk to him.
Maybe we should talk to him. In fact, I will go ahead and talk to SOT. He's standing right over here next to me for the post-game interview. First off, thanks for giving me some good fantasy points this week. I do appreciate that one, but mostly congrats on your win out here. Talk to me a little about this Shiva, because when we talked with the Leviathans, it was kind of a joking matter where Yarkor was like, man, I never get to play Shiva because Panatom always wants to get it. Is it similar case for you guys where Layers is just saying, give me Shiva, only I get to play him?
No, not really. I mean, it's kind of a flex, but I think overall it's probably better in jungle. Just the way his kid is. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's probably better in jungle.
Smart man.
I mean, this is something that Mifflin was talking about. Just give me Shiva in the jungle, give it to me here. How do you guys feel about a win up today? The Camelot Kings, they're at the top of the leaderboards right now. They were 3-1. Sitting at that top seed. I mean, how does it feel getting that big win on them here today?
Yeah, it feels pretty good because we were tied with Bolts for number 2. So now I think we're first seed now. Technically.
I think so.
Probably. I don't know.
We'll get to see in a few minutes where it actually ends up lining up. But
yeah, it just feels really good, honestly. I mean, this weekend, this isn't the match of our weekend. I mean, Scarabs. I mean, obviously, with top team, it's gonna be really scary to play them tomorrow. I'm kind of shivering. So the Kings was kind of light work compared to the Scarabs, but we're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, well, I'll wish you the best of luck in your matchup against the Scarabs tomorrow. It seems you're going to need some luck. You're going to be shaking up there, man. It's a rough team out there. Congrats on your win. I'll let you get back with the team to celebrate and get prepared for that next one. He's got to prep up for that matchup against the Scarabs. Though notably, the Scarabs, another team that we talk about, they're able to take these games and these sets the full distance out here. Very similar to what the Kings have been able to do. Currently, the Scarabs are that very same way back in Season 3.
J-Mac, did you take him at face value there? Yeah, I didn't either. He may have said he was shaking, but I was looking at his boots, and they were, solidly planted.
Was he wearing boots?
No. It's proverbial, my guy.
I know, we're just having some fun out here. Let's take a look, though, at the schedule and the standings to see if it actually is a first seed out of the Tartarus Titans whenever it comes down to this one. I believe we were told that they are sitting currently in that first seed spot here.
Yes,
A
sir.
win
Yes, sir.
today does push them up. And we will now take a look at the remainder of our weekend schedule here. And it will be the Scarabs and the Titans first thing tomorrow. So the last team today, but the first team up tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Remember, set your clocks a little bit earlier for SPL. We won't be starting with our traditional SCC. And then we've got the Bolts and the Dragons for our second one, and the Warriors and the Kings will make their way back in the studio one more time to face off on our final set tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm really excited for tomorrow. The Tartarus Titans obviously riding a high up against Sora Scarabs. Maybe some beef there. SOT lining up against his previous team. The Camelot Kings can try and rejoin the top of the standings if they're capable of picking up their fourth win if they are able to win their set up against the Oni Warriors. One that I think most would expect them to be able to take. Either way, there's only one takeaway. Only one thing I can impart onto the fans at home, and it's that you need to be there tomorrow at 11 a.m. and watch all the games, all the time, every Sunday, forever.
Every single one, ever, forever and ever, for as long as this keeps going on. But if for some reason you can't make it, whether you had, I don't know, a doctor's appointment, you had to go,
Skip it.
You had to go eat lunch with your family or something like
cares?
that. You probably could just go ahead and skip it, but you can always make sure to go over to the YouTube channel too, because SMITE VOD is where all of those do end up going up at the end of. It's usually a couple of days later before those go through, so you'll have some time to go back and watch out here. But gonna be some fun games tomorrow. I mean, 3 big sets popping out here, especially that first one. You know, the Scarabs and the Titans gonna be one that you want to stick around for. You want to make sure you also stick around for that Bolts of the Dragon set that's gonna be coming up. As Mifflin said, it's gonna be 11 a.m. tomorrow here on the twitch.tv/SMITE Game channel. We'll see you then. Peach it.
That's Aggro's thing.
You're right, it was.